Hi guys, and welcome to my most favorite day of the week. I'm just going to show you this briefly because it's tomato season. This to me is a lot of wealth, but we just got back from XRP and it's kind of interesting how I feel about it. We're going to get together and talk about that in just a second, but here's a clip from the event. And would you let me know if you can hear something, because the sound is registering, but we're not sure you're hearing it.
Zang Enterprise CEO, Lynette Zang.
Hi guys, so it was a great turnout at XRP. They almost doubled attendance year over year. It was an interesting year because last year I was so shocked at all of the people that attended the breakout. There were a couple glitches, special guests, and all that kind of threw the schedule off a little bit. But it was a great event, and at least at this point, I'm scheduled to be on the main stage next year. We'll see what happens. That's still a year away. And interestingly enough, a very wonderful person gifted me this XRP coin, although it's just a representation. And what I find really interesting is that it's supposed to represent, a gold coin. It's gold. Right? It's not real gold. It's plastic colored gold. So this is the original, but they want you to think about digital coins as gold. That's why Bitcoin is colored in gold and XRP is in gold. Why not purple? Why not green? Why not orange? So I feel like you and I are just all communicating, and it's interesting how I feel about coming back here, because while I feel like I found my voice and have started to really get to say what I'm trying to say and show what I'm trying to show at these events, what I'm also really trying to do is meet people where they are so that I can help them get to where they want to be or need to be. So I want to clarify a few things. Number one, because this has also come up in the comments, truthfully, I've been watching President Trump and his career since the early 2000s. It is absolutely irrelevant how I might feel about him. But frankly, he has accepted gold for lease payments in the past, and I do believe that he is our best opportunity, certainly that I've ever seen, at getting sound money back in the system again. He is definitely a disruptor, and that's nothing negative. We need that disruption because we're out of purchasing power in this currency. We have to shift into a new currency system. Is it going to be digital? Of course it's going to be digital. What physical gold does is it creates that bridge, and physical silver as well. It creates that bridge to hold your purchasing power to get you from one currency system into the next currency system. So I don't want you to not listen to me because you think or you assume that I have one feeling or another. I really am about getting gold back in the system. And having studied the laws over all these years, frankly, it didn't matter who was in office. Their job is to help us make this transition or even force the transition, because there is officially virtually no purchasing power left in the system. And frankly, all of that debt has to be inflated away in order to go into the new system and have the ability to back that new system with some level of gold. 40% should really do it. And I can see this as emerging. I am just saying that it must be redeemable. Because if it is not, and what that means is if you don't like what they're doing, you can send in this and request this, or you can request this out of your money supply. That way, we now, as the public, have a tool to hold everybody accountable. I don't see it as either or. And everything is always sold as how convenient things are. But let us be honest, and it doesn't matter whether it was, the original, oh, how heavy to carry all these gold coins in your pocket, to this, how convenient. And then from this into this, how convenient. And now from this into this, how convenient. Convenience is not free. Neither is freedom. Freedom is not free. So my fight is not against cryptocurrencies or AI or any of this new technology. Time will march on. But what I'm telling you is, having studied currency life cycles and how they make that shift over all of these years since 1987, these shifts are not easy for most people. And what are these things valued in? These things are valued in this. So if they're valued in this, and this stuff has absolutely zero value, we got a problem. If, however, there is a component of this, real sound money in this, and we can redeem it, now we're talking about something different. So that is my fight, getting sound money back in the system again. It is purely economic, and it doesn't matter to me, frankly, who's in office, because I want to be my own central bank. And it's something that I recommend to you guys as well. But it was really it was a great event. And there was a lot of positivity and a lot of energy. I'm going to say, in all of my studies, I'd say, well, how can they make this transition, and how did people accept it, right? Why did people accept them pulling gold out of the system, and then ultimately pulling silver out of the system, and then ultimately just going to debt? And nobody squawked. But we know that it's because they keep things looking as normal as possible. So they need adoption in this. It is kind of amazing to me, though, with everything that Wall Street has done, for anybody to continue to think that this is completely outside of the system, that it can go around the system. It can't. Yes, you can carry it on a coin or on a thumb drive in your pocket, but this is sound money. This stuff has yet to be proven. So I'm not saying don't do it. You've got to do whatever you're comfortable with, regardless of what anybody says. I'm saying hedge your bet and join the sound money movement to get sound money back in the system again. So now I'll jump to questions, and you can ask me anything that you want. And ML asks, we know that countries are stacking gold. Yes. And we know the reset will most likely be digital. Yes. Doesn't this add up to a high possibility of a gold-backed digital currency as the new system? I hope so. And that's what we have a shot for. But it's not going to happen unless we demand it. So that's why it's so important for us to work toward having the states legalize gold and silver and removing the tax from it. And then that can put pressure on the federal government. But again, I do believe that with President Trump, we have our best shot at making that happen. So, yeah, I would love to do that. Just having a gold-backed digital currency. But remember, there's a difference between backing and pegging. If you cannot redeem it for the gold, it's not backed. It's simply pegged to an easily manipulated price. The only way that you and I will have our power back as citizens is if we can demand to have the gold come back again to us, if we don't like what we're seeing. If everything is hunky-dory because, it is true, if it's redeemable, it's going to be redeemed. But why is it going to be redeemed? It's going to be redeemed if we don't like what we're seeing our government or our central bankers do. As it should be. That's the power. So, yeah, I can see that. But first, they're going to have to burn off all of this debt that they created, and that's hyperinflation. And personally, according to the technical data that I'm looking at, I believe that has already begun. It's just not yet visible. And Jeff Hadley asks, hi, Lynette, what would be your top 5 favorite investments? Well, aside from gold and silver, right, then it's also food, water, and energy, because these are things we cannot live without. Now, I'm going to tell you that in the past, I've certainly owned a lot of stocks and bonds and mutual funds and haven't a few ETFs, things like that, right? And I anticipate in the future that I could easily see myself going back into those investments, but not before everything gets burned off. Because with the formulas and the creative accounting, I can't sit here and tell you for sure what companies are zombie companies that will not survive this reset, nor can I tell you what cryptocurrencies are going to survive it yet. I do know some will, but again, if all they can do is be converted into these, then let's wait until this resets, and that's when I will start to make my choices and likely buy the cryptocurrencies. And I'll let you know when I do. And just because I don't, I mean, honestly, my concern is that people have their blinders on so much that all they see is straight ahead. And when that's all you see, then you're likely to be blindsided because you can't see what's coming out over here. A leverage bet, or a protected bet, I should say, that's more accurate, where you're going to do this, rock and roll hoochie coo, just do the right amount of this to offset any losses that you might be taking as we transition into the new system. I mean, XRP and Bitcoin are highly likely to be part of that new digital system, and others perhaps as well, stable coins, what have you. I just want to know who's going to survive. And stable coins, by the way, are dollar-based. So there you go. And Wasted White Boy 2 asks, you say that the government will print more money to pay off the debt. How can they pay off the debt when they are borrowing money to pay it off? Well, what they're doing is rolling over that debt. So when you look at those debt charts, they're basically going straight up. So for you and me, it might be like you have a credit card and you've maxed out that new credit card, and somebody might send you a new credit card so you can transfer the balance. Maybe it's got a little lower interest rate or something like that, or you take out a home equity loan, right? You haven't actually paid off that debt. What you've really done is just rolled that debt over. And yes, there are costs and fees associated with it, which is why we're over, 37 trillion in debt that they admit to in one little place. It's much higher than that, but that's how they do it. They're not really paying off all of the debt. They're paying off the old debt and creating new debt at the same time, which is why whenever you look on those debt charts, they just keep going up and up and up. But, whether you're a government, a corporation, or an individual, the laws of economics work the same for all of us. It's just that obviously governments and corporations have much deeper pockets than we do. They also have a lot more access to credit than we do, than the public does. But that's how they do it. And Caleb's Carnivore Quest says, what are your thoughts on AI? I use AI every day, and I think it's going to be a huge part of the near future. Absolutely. And it's a huge part of the current future. But like everything, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. And you know what? That's true with gold and silver as well. You just have to weigh one against the other. And there are no guardrails yet on any of these systems. And that's why I know they have to be part of the next crisis. One of the articles that I was recently reading on AI is how they are fine-tuning it and going to take over the advertisements. Why does that matter? Well, you're online, you're constantly being bombarded with ads. You might have looked for a hot water heater, and now you've got all these ads coming at you for hot water heaters. But, AI really gets to know how you think. And that means that more than just, I was looking for a hot water heater and that's why I'm seeing all of these ads for them. AI has the ability, or will have the ability completely, probably in the near future at some point, to absolutely read your entire thought process. And now these ads are not just geared to you looking for something, but how you think. And so you are manipulated. That takes us back to the tokenization and the fact that by 2030, you will own nothing, because AI will have the ability to use your very thought process against you. So there are no guardrails on it yet. They always wait for a huge crisis to put them in, and then they don't necessarily really put them in, just like what happened in 2008 and Dodd-Frank. And even before all of the regulations were actually written, right? So that was 2010. They started eliminating all of those regulations. So, how much teeth does it have? But they did leave in the bail-in. They didn't take the bail-in out. And I'm going to be doing a piece on the most current FDIC report. I'll record that tomorrow. It'll go out probably sometime this week or next week. So, yes, I do think that AI is going to be huge. It's just that in these transitions, Caleb, things don't transition easily and smoothly. There's got to be some kind of crisis because the regulators just allow things to evolve and develop as they're going to without those guardrails. Then after the crisis, they will make some attempt to put those guardrails in, and we'll just have to wait and see. So, I do think AI, I think it's already huge. I think it's being adopted more and more and more, not just by individuals, but by corporations. And I don't always trust their motivations. And I don't always trust, actually, I typically don't trust that they have my best interest, your best interests at heart. And that's also why it's so important to be properly diversified. And Wasted White Boy 2 asks, why do they recommend to buy Canadian gold maple leafs in the Great Taking instead of American gold coins? Well, you'd actually have to ask the author for the definitive answer, but my guess would be because they might feel that would be less, they would have less ability to confiscate. However, in the state laws that are legalizing gold and silver in transactions like in Florida, they are only accepting American minted coins. So it could actually be the opposite. I don't know what they're going to do during this next confiscation. I don't know whether it's going to be overt, like taking the gold away from us, outlawing it, or covert, like they've done with lots of taxes and manipulating the price that you see. So I don't actually recommend gold maple leafs or any new gold coins, whether they're American or foreign. I personally like the old gold and old silver coins because they are American minted, but they're in a different category and classification. You can hold gold maple leafs in your IRA. Therefore, the IRS classifies that as monetary gold, whereas this is collectible gold. And this is pre-64 silver. So to be safe, and having the experience of my Uncle Al, having at least 3,000 ounces of gold when it was illegal to hold more than 5, drives me in this direction. But it's probably because he thinks they're less likely to be confiscated. I would disagree with that, even though this is definitely a great taking. And Pandemonium asks, when it comes to collectible gold, what's your choice for the same price between rarer coins or more common coins but with better quality? I would personally go with more rare coins. And the reason is because when we go to exit, all right, so this is part of the exit strategy. We want every single option open to us because it's kind of like going into an auction. And let's say there are 10 people at this auction and you have 10 coins, so common date coins, and they're all out on the table and everybody wants one, which means that wherever that auction opens up, that's what they're going to pay for it. But with a more rare coin, everybody wants it, and whoever's willing to pay the most gets it. And be very clear, when we're looking at putting a portfolio together, what we're looking for always is the cheapest house in the best neighborhood. So building on that question, we're going to look, if you're going to be converting into, say, dividend-paying stocks after we know who's going to survive them, that's a certain classification based on that quality and that rarity. So common dates might be in there as well, depending upon the classification. Call us, talk to the strategy specialists. They can walk you through that more specifically and give you specific examples of what we're talking about here. But what we're going to look at for like that same price, we're going to go for the most rare coin because that is the one that is most likely to give you your biggest bang for your buck and have more doors open when it is time to liquidate. This isn't just going in. I mean, that's certainly part of it, but it's also exiting the strategy, executing the whole strategy, actually, is a better way to say it. And Miramar asks, what do I think of Donegal Mint coins? I think they're a new coin. So I'll look at that because I don't necessarily know that specifically. But if they're a new coin, then they're bullion. Then they're monetary. Can you hold them in an IRA? Donegal Mint. But we'll talk more about that next week. And Mom versus Chef. Hi, it seems that collectible gold is a very small market, one in which a person can easily be taken advantage of. The price that someone will pay when trying to sell is very subjective. It is a smaller market than just straight bullion, which is what this is. However, having said that, it is also a global market. So I disagree because there are like 3,000 dealers out there. So you have a pretty broad-based market, Plus, our wholesalers, we do everything to hold their toes to the fire. And while it might make the most sense, I mean, on the way out, again, I'm going to talk about the exit strategy. On the way in, we're making our comparisons and we're holding the toes to the fire. So you always have to be in at the market, and you're also always out at the market. But that's also the point in making sure that you have the broadest market to work in, not just one little area. That's probably why I'm not crazy about commemorative coins, but I've been working with these for years, and my uncle was working with them before that. I do have serious concerns about confiscation because they've been confiscating our wealth our whole entire lives since the day you were born. So it's hard for me to imagine that they're going to stop at the very last minute and go, oh yeah, but you get to keep them. However, that is the point of having an entire strategy, because I'm not going to mom and pop and going, well, what would you give me for this coin? That's the way the market was prior to 1986. But that's also the whole point of slabbing these coins. In this hard plastic case, that's called slabbing. And that guarantees that it is what we say that it is. So imagine if they're confiscating this monetary gold, that is going to be in IRAs. That's where most of the gold, when the individuals hold them, that's where most of that gold is held. I want to be in the category with the guys that write the laws and the rules, because I'm much more likely to be able to keep them. Now, what if this is the only way that you can hold gold? What do you think that might do for demand? And if you only have one place to take it, so that's why it's important to have that exit strategy, because when it's time to execute and leave these markets, we're going to be looking at every single exit that there is, also taking into account the time frame when we want to use that. And we're going to take you out at where you are going to get the biggest bang for your buck. You do whatever you're comfortable with. So if you're married to bullion, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo will sell you bullion. That's not a problem. Just properly diversify with this, because I personally like it when it doesn't matter if I'm right and it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. And if you just have the best, it's the same thing with the cryptocurrencies. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying properly diversify so that no matter what happens, you're whole. And in fact, that's what this whole strategy is about, is because your barterable portfolio, which, this stuff, fractionals and silver, etc., well, and your cash, that's designed to be used up. So part of the strategy is, by the time we do all of this, it is a full circle moment, and you have gold to recoup what you even used to convert into other assets, to convert into food and water and all of that. Does that make sense? And if it doesn't, make sure that Josh knows, and he'll put it up there, and I'll try and explain it a little differently. And Mr. Puspa 20, thoughts on digital gold silver platform like Kinesis. Well, I like them as long as you can pull the gold out. Like Glint, I was there with Jason Cousins, who I absolutely love a lot. And the Glint, that is convertible. Kinesis is convertible. It must be convertible. That's my only caveat. And roger that. But I wouldn't do all of my gold in there either, right? I can see a place for it in the beginning phase of this, of this strategy. At the same level, you want a certain level of cash, you want a certain level of silver, let's see, here you go. Even the gold backs, which are, they're expensive, but there's gold in them, our hills. just not for your entire portfolio. But for the barterable part of your portfolio, I could see a place for all of it. And Roger that, how do you feel about stacking American Eagles? Silver, gold, because it's monetary metal. That's why. The double eagle, I stack those all the time. This is my emergency savings. If I need to come up with cash quickly, I'll convert this. I don't really care. But that's how I feel about it. I have this eagle, so I can say it. But then again, I do believe that we're going to see at least there's a shot of an over confiscation. It's been confiscated in the U.S. 3 times. So could there be a 4th? I don't know for sure, but. And ML asks, with XRP's unique utility and scalability, do you think this could be part of a gold-backed digital currency? Eventually, yes, I do. But right now, no, I do not. Because once they make gold a component of any currency, remember, it fixes the debt where it is. So they have to burn off the debt first in order to really be able to do that. Otherwise, we're in deeper doo-doo than we are right now. They've got to hyperinflate the debt away in order to go into a new system and have a clean slate to work with. So yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. And I hope so. I want whatever our new system to be gold backed with redeemable gold, not pegged gold just to a manipulated price, but to actually have the ability to redeem it. It'll keep everybody a whole lot more honest. And PJR, gold is about to retire. Bitcoin is taking the baton from grandma. Okay. So, you can go in like this. What's wrong with diversification? I can't see anything. But I have studied what happens to currencies since 1987. And I do know that when one system dies, another one is born. But can you really count on, this is a representation of this? Please, PJR, tell me why they didn't make this purple or orange or green or blue. They made it gold for you to think that it's like this. It's not. Take off the glasses that help you not see and hide the truth from you. And what's wrong with being appropriately diversified? I mean, booty hooty Rudy Manooty. If I'm wrong, I have a whole bunch of gold and silver that I can liquidate. And you know why I can liquidate it? Because it's used in every single sector of the global economy. Is Bitcoin used in every single sector of the global economy? No, it's not. Only gold runs no counterparty risk. All the rest of this runs counterparty risk. So I'm not telling you not to do it. You do what's in your heart to do. All I'm saying is, what's wrong with a little diversification? And I've been around long enough. And Caleb's Carnivore Quest. And by the way, actually, it's kind of funny. Bitcoin has taken the baton from grandma, and I am a grandma. And I'm proud of being a grandma because I do view my job as protecting you, as it is to protect my grandchildren and their children that will be born down the road, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And remember, as a child of the 70s, you didn't trust anybody over 30. The Vietnam War, my sister Elena was actually billy clubbed at Kent State. Thank God she survived it. But, I was I was never really a hippie. I was always more of a goody two-shoes. But I had 2 sisters that were certainly in that realm. And I remember those days of transition. And we're going through those days of transition again, much, much bigger. So if you ignore history, then you're probably going to repeat history. And all I'm suggesting, like a really good grandma would do, is that you are safe. That's what I want for all of us. That's what I want for you. I want you to be safe. N, Caleb's Carnivore Quest is, Lynette, how do I start to grow a like-minded community? Love that question. There are some really good places to start. Number one, you can see if there's a meetup in your area, but also going to a community garden in your area and volunteering, going to a farmer's market where they're growing your food and doing some volunteer work and becoming part of that, talking to people, showing people what's going on. Right? I mean, just be friendly, just be open, and you'll grow that community. And that was a big question for me, because even though it's been part of my mantra since 2008 when I started developing my mantra, honestly, it was only when I went to Australia in September of 2023, that's when I realized that that was the most important part of what I talk about. So like you, I'm still learning how to do it too. But if you talk about it and you put it out in the universe and you say, this is what I'm looking for, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But those are some very easy places to go. Community gardens, farmers markets, meetup groups. See what's out there and just start talking. You'll find your community. And PAEMTFF9 asks, the government, I like that, doesn't want physical sound money like gold and silver. Why do you think they suddenly ceased talking about Fort Knox? Isn't that a great question? I was asking, actually, a lot of people were talking about that at XRP. It's like, how come they stopped talking about that? I don't really know, but I can tell you that President Trump has accepted in the past, I don't know if he's doing it at the moment, I'll do a little research on this, but in the past, he has accepted gold for lease payments. So that's why, you know, I think that this is, and he loves Judy Shelton, which is she is a huge advocate for sound money. So I think we've got a shot. And if enough people do it, I mean, that's the thing. If we don't stand up and demand it, no, why would they put it in the system? It's easier to control us in a digital world where if they don't like your politics or they don't like what you're doing, they push a button and you're out of the system. What are you going to do? If they say jump, you're going to have to say how high. What do you do if the grid goes down? I mean, and also take a look at what's happening with the energy sources. Meta just signed a 20-year contract for nuclear energy. A lot of these large tech companies are going in and buying energy companies. And if they need it for their AI or they need it for their digital work versus you needing it to power your house, it's simple. You need to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible as we go through this. So food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. If you have all those things in place, then you are going to have the ability to sustain a reasonable transition into this new system. And if you choose not to do what they're trying to force you to do, you're not going to be impacted by it. And that's the piece. I just want everybody to be safe and retain their freedom and their choices. Freedom is not free. And neither is integrity, is not convenient either. And convenience is not free. And Maria is thoughts on Bitcoin and how to explain the importance of diversification to a hesitant family. You know, I have really been working hard on how to explain this. And when I went to Australia the last time, so last November, honestly, that was the very first time that I got off the stage and I went, nailed it. I finally started finding my voice. And I've been doing this for a long time. It just takes a while. Well, now I'm trying to hone and fine tune that voice. And one of the reasons why I love to do, especially in-person shows, is because somebody's always going to show me where my holes are in what I'm presenting. So I like that question, Maria. And while, let me see, Josh, can you copy that over for me? And let's see if I can't just do something and give you that tool. Okay? Short, sweet, because you're not going to get them to sit for more than 3 minutes, 5 minutes. No more than 5 minutes. Let me work on that for you and for anybody else that wants it. Life is short. Make it sweet. I agree. Am I correct in thinking Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a type of fiat currency? Yes, you are correct. That's why I won't buy either. Am I on the right track? Well, I don't own either, and I would tell you, and I will tell you when I convert. What we need to see, look, I have done this. I have studied how they make this shift forever, and they make things seem as normal as possible. So the younger generation is a generation that's grown up with this technology. Maybe us old people didn't die off fast enough. We're still going to be around. And guess what? When this is the tool of barter, we're all going to have to use this tool of barter, like it or lump it. So why not have an impact on what it is? Because yes, 100%, this is fiat money. Fiat means by decree. So that means that it's government or frankly, even corporate money that are defining the numbers that you see. But it doesn't matter what the numbers are. I mean, you guys have seen it a gazillion times with this, well, here's 100,000 dong note, Vietnamese dong. I can't buy anything with this. Nothing. All 4,800 currencies, fiat currencies that have existed that you can't do anything with. So people get blinded by numbers. And one of the ways that they get adoption is they let it fly. They let it go up. Why are they suppressing the visible price of gold? Because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency and a looming crisis. And they don't want you to understand that this is just garbage. That's all it is. It's just garbage. It means nothing. And by design, it's about losing your purchasing power and forcing you to have to work more and more and more. And by the way, for those that are young, how easy is it for you to buy a house? How easy is it for you to start a business? Right? It's the American dream. You can be anything. You can do anything. You know, I was born in 1954. I had those opportunities. Even my daughters, you know, one is a doctor, the other owns an automotive repair business. But their children, my grandson is 12. I have another one that's 18, a granddaughter that's 16, and a granddaughter that's 10. They don't have the same opportunities that my children had, or certainly than I have. So what I'm trying to do here is level the playing field. That's what gold does. It levels the playing field. It gives the public power. Do you own enough Bitcoin to control that market? Because corporations do. So who's going to be the one to control this? This is controlled by demand and supply, and right now the spot market. But that's not permanent. That's temporary. That's what history shows. So Fairy Lake Garden asks, are we going to have a tour of your home off-grid location soon? Yeah, we haven't really set an exact time to go up there, but I do have some new staff that's starting there now. And I think I'm going up. I have to look on my calendar either next week or the following week, and I could sure take some pictures while I'm up there. And I got to bring Josh and Mimi up there soon too. So yes, you will. I would love to see it, and also your food storage, and I would love more videos of your garden too. We are working on that, and we do have scheduled to pick a specific date. So we're working on that. I appreciate your patience. For me, I'm impatiently patient, which means I wanted it a year ago, honestly. But we have to make sure that we have everything in place so that when we start it, it is valuable to you. So we're getting there. We're getting closer and closer. And Michael Palmer, but we could do some videos, because you and I talked about walking around and me just showing you how I evolved the mantra: food, water, energy, etc. So we'll do that. We can do that. And Paul Dunnigan asks, your take on gold backs? Well, I like the fact that there is 1,000th of an ounce of gold embedded in it, and also that they have been working on getting companies to accept it and adopt it. So I can see a place for it in the very first part of the strategy as the public becomes more aware. However, it is an extraordinarily high premium, and premiums don't typically bother me a whole lot as long as they're not above the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold. That's why that's so important to understand what the true fundamental value of any asset or any instrument is. And I would suggest that with the cryptocurrencies too. Because the part that I've been really having a challenge is what you can convert them into, right? What's the utility? This is 100% utility because it's used in every single sector of the global economy. So is this. It's used everywhere. So you have the broadest base of functionality and the broadest base of demand. That's why gold and silver have never, ever, ever gone to zero. And they haven't figured out how to duplicate this in a lab yet, the unique qualities that both of these metals possess. Whereas there's lots of different cryptocurrencies. Some are going to rise up, like Bitcoin and XRP. Some will go away, and there are a number that has gone away. So we just have to wait and see. But that's my take on goldbacks. I can see them for part of the portfolio, absolutely. And I like the fact that they do actually have gold embedded in them. And Mitmont asks, hi, Lynette. Washington is going to start a sales tax of 10% on precious metals. I don't expect good things after. This is why we have to call the representatives, and we've got that link, and maybe Josh, you could put the link in the header on the sound money movement so you can see what's happening in each state. If enough people call their congressman, write their congressman, let their senators, let their politicians know that they want gold and silver legalized in that state, that eliminates that sales tax. Ron Paul, you're taxing money. Well, they use inflation to tax this crap, so much so that they've taken out 97% of its value officially. You know that it's worse than that. So, yeah, that tactic is just a tactic to scare you away from it. And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day and in Minnesota, and they were talking about the taxes, and with the taxes so high, does it even make sense to do it? Well, let's say that this just goes to fundamental value, 40 grand, right? And let's say that the taxes are 50%. That's still 20 grand versus zero. Okay? 1 trillion times zero is zero. And when that happens, I guarantee you, you're not going to want to convert this into this stuff because you're going to be well aware that it is losing all of its purchasing power value. You'll do it in order to convert into an undervalued asset or an income producing asset. Then you'll convert it and use it. So that's all part of the strategy, though, is what do you do when you're in hyperinflation? So yes, they tax precious metals at a high level because they don't want you to have it. But quite honestly, I don't think people in the government understand what money is, just like people in the public don't understand what money is. We're doing a lot of things on an educational level because the more you know, the more empowered you are. So, and that would go for the politicians too. And Vicky Palmer asks, what does China finding 1,100 tons of gold do to the markets? Doesn't do anything because there's still just a finite amount, right? Anything physical, trees, glasses, anything physical, there is a finite amount. Anything intangible can be an infinite amount. So it doesn't, the new gold findings, and by the way, the Department of the Interior runs a study on an annual basis with how much gold is yet in the ground. There's about, I think it's, don't hold me to this because obviously I don't have it right in front of me, but if I remember this correctly, I believe there's like 52,000 ounces, including those 1,100 tons, that is yet in the ground to mine. But we have hit peak gold. There's more gold that's been pulled out of the ground than is left in the ground. So if there is another finding of it, it really doesn't matter. It might reduce the fundamental value a little bit, but it will not have that great an impact because they keep doing this. So as long as they keep doing that, in terms of this, gold goes up. And KTM asks, what do you think of the new mint ID coins? I don't know. Let me see. I'll put that in with the Donaga mint coins. But if it's a new coin, probably not going to like it very much. If you can hold it in an IRA, I'm telling you right now, I'm not buying it. But I'll find out. So we'll talk about both of those next week. And Social D asks, hi, Lynette, you've mentioned previously that the more of us that hold gold, the better the chance we have to negotiate at the table. In your opinion, how could that work? We vote with our wallets. We vote with our purses. So if enough people contact their government and saying we want sound money in there, and if enough people convert their fiat money into physical gold and silver, we have people that are in Congress that are supporting gold and silver as legal tender again. And again, we do have a president in there that we've got a shot. So it is making our voices heard by positioning into it. If we can get 3% of the global population to own physical gold and silver, that's our vote. And if we refuse to use what they want to stuff down our throats until they put gold and silver in there, or at least gold in there, redeemable, that's how we have a seat at the table. We have to be more visible. And the only way that we're more visible is if we are actually buying gold and silver instead of the other garbage that they want us to buy, the stocks, the bonds, the ETFs, the cryptocurrencies, because they want to shift us in that direction. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying be properly diversified. Make sure you have gold and silver as well. And by the way, you can call us, because how much gold and silver do you need to protect what you've already accumulated, to make sure that you can sustain your standard of living, and also to put you in a position to take advantage of the opportunities? Because you're looking at Bitcoin at what, 106,000 right now? Okay. Well, guess what? When they reset this, and I'm going to do something on this so that you can see it and it's not just blah, blah, blah talk. But if you can only convert these into dollars, when the dollar resets, that's what happens to this too. So even if it doesn't go away, if you're holding the real thing that this is supposed to represent, guess what you get to do? Buy this dirt cheap. We'll know who survives and who's going to be part of the overall system, and you just end up better off than before they even do that reset. So that's the point of the strategy. And what strategy do you have if all you have is this or stocks or any of that? You're just buying into what they can devalue to zero and how they can transfer your wealth. And you may or may not believe me, but that's history. Is this time different? Maybe, but probably not. You know, and I don't know if something's happened the same way over 4,800 times and we're doing the same thing. How likely is it that this time is different? We always think it's going to be different. It never is. And let's see, better. Okay, so that's how I think it'll work. And Gary Banturk asks, we live in Turkey. Okay, I listen to you and I exchange all of my money at bank accounts with physical gold bars. Yay. And so you've noticed now it is not really time in Turkey to convert it back because I think you've got more. I think the whole world has the hyperinflation, but I really appreciate that. And, you know, you're seeing, I was so excited when I saw, because I remember in 2020 when Turks were selling their cars and their homes and going into gold, and now they're doing the reverse, showing you how you execute that strategy. It's just not time yet. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for chiming in, and please share. I really appreciate it. Even if you're having some experience with what I just talked about, or you know somebody that's having that experience, because this is community and we have to talk. And Alex User, when a conference in Europe, I will keep you posted on that. We've a couple things are changing at the moment, so just stay tuned because I absolutely will do that. And Jacqueline asks, how might the role of gold, physical or digital, change if we see further de-dollarization or another significant downgrade to U.S. creditworthiness? Well, you know, it becomes more and more important. Thank you for that question, Jacqueline, because this is money, this is universal money all over the world, no matter who minted it. But we are going to get more de-dollarization, and the significant downgrade in the U.S. creditworthiness, we haven't felt the repercussions of that yet, because that means that borrowing costs have to go up. And that also means that all of those mutual funds and ETFs that by their prospectus can only hold AAA rated paper, so AAA rated debt, what's going to happen as they sell that off? You're going to see interest rates go up. And while banks kind of benefited for the interest rates sort of going a little bit like this, that is going to turn around. All of the banks are severely insolvent. But de-dollarization, sound money, means that you have money no matter what, everywhere and anywhere in the world. And another significant downgrade, we're still dealing with the one that was just dealt us. We have not seen the ramifications of that, but I expect de-dollarization to continue to pick up as what they're getting from America. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a lot of chaos and uncertainty, and things are shifting really, really rapidly. So yes, definitely more de-dollarization and turning away from the foundation of the global financial system, which are U.S. Treasury bonds. That's a bad thing because that creates that doom loop where you have people or countries that are de-dollarizing and not buying as many of the bonds. But then that's the support to the global financial system. So that weakens it even further. Do you see what I'm saying? So yeah, great question. And you better have gold and silver and have a strategy that you're executing that includes food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And DL Blue 65 asks, what is gold tokenization? Is this a modern day confiscation? Seems only pre-33 gold will be left. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But I've got news for you, DL. They are not just trying to tokenize this. They're also trying to bring this back in the system, including rare collectibles, right? If they can tokenize, and we'll have to agree to that, at least initially. They can't force you, because if they force you, then you know, right, that something's different. And you might go, no, I'm not going to agree to this. But if they can entice you and get you to agree to tokenize all of your wealth, well, then you get to hold your wealth on your phone in itty bitty tiny increments, and eventually you will have nothing. I don't think you'll be happy, though. So I do agree that pre-33 gold is your best bet. That's why that's all that I buy. Now, that hasn't always been true, but because of where we are in this trend cycle, that is 100% true now. You see all of the bullion that I own when I wear my travel bracelet and right there. So, yep. And I'm not going to agree to tokenize it. And that also goes back into that diversification, right? If you're diversified, then no matter what happens, what if I'm right? What if I'm wrong? Diversify and it doesn't matter. And Jerry Mandarin asks, Bitcoin's blockchain has near zero counterparty risk. Near zero, not zero. And decentralized and trustless, but exchanges, custodial wallets, or WBTC can be risky if they fail, as we've seen. Hold your own keys in a non-custodial wallet. That's part of it. The challenge I'm having, honestly, and anybody that can help me figure this out, I'm definitely open to this conversation, is I'm not an engineer. And not only am I not an engineer, I'm not a specific engineer to be able to read and understand the code that supports these digital currencies. So if I can't understand it, I mean, gold and silver to me are very simple and very clean, right? The representation, the digital currencies and decentralized and trustless, I mean, I think that this stuff is easy to manipulate. And since I don't know this code, it's easy for me to be fooled. I'm not saying don't do it. You want to trust it, rock and roll hoochie coo. I do imagine that there will come a time when I will be buying it. And when that day comes, I will tell you about it. But they're not going to entice me because they push the price up, because it doesn't matter how many zeros they are after it. It matters what I can convert it into. And I can't live without food, but I can live without a whole bunch of other things. So maybe you're right and maybe you're wrong. Maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong. But history is on my side. Digital, we still have to see what that test is. We haven't gone through that test yet. It's only been around since 2009. This has been around for 6,000 years. I don't know. The True Flight to Safety asset, can you please tell me why the global central banks are buying more gold than they ever have before? Because who knows more about what they're doing to the currencies? So Kathy Piscatello says, since all countries are heavily in debt, will the reset be global at the same time? Yes, this is a global issue. That's why I talk about the global community and that we have to come together to get sound money in the system globally. This is not country by country, 100%. This is a global issue, which is also why I said it's not over in Turkey yet. And if you haven't watched that video, please do yourself a favor and go watch it, because I love the fact that it shows a full circle. Even if it's not quite time yet, it definitely shows a full circle, and I love that. And RL asks, how much longer do you think we have? Do you think there will be a black swan event to flip over to the new system, or will it be a slow grind? I think there's going to be a black swan event, and I don't think that's too far down the road, because it was interesting. They were talking on Bloomberg today about a systemic shift in the debt. But that systemic shift in the debt actually happened in 22, when all of a sudden the central banks broke a 44-year trend cycle. But understand that these entities, the government, the central banks, they want distance between what their policy is and when you see it, because that way you do not equate this consequence with this behavior. And they also want it introduced separate from them, again, so that you do not equate this outcome with this behavior. But don't be fooled. That's the advantage of making sure that you're your own central bank, right? So, yeah, I do think there will be a major black swan event. The derivatives market scares the crap out of me because you can't really see it. That's opaque. And you know that there has to be a lot of bombs that are going off, but it's the banks that create this garbage that dictate whether or not there's a default, and they keep it quite opaque. So, you know, somebody asked me, so what black swan event do you see coming? I don't know. That's why it's called a black swan, because I can't see it coming. So, yeah, just get prepared. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And that way you just don't have to worry about it, because we're all going to be surprised, but we're not going to be shocked. And Joe Bay says, what about platinum? Is that also likely to be confiscated? Platinum is not a monetary metal. It is actually more rare than gold, but it's more of a metal that goes into manufacturing, and that does not have a history of confiscation. So a lot of this stuff, like this would be platinum in this. So a lot of the older stuff, jewelry was made with platinum, and it is definitely a precious metal, but it's not a monetary metal. So that's why my personal focus, even though I have platinum, is definitely more on gold and silver, because this is a currency life cycle issue, and gold is the primary currency metal and silver is the secondary currency metal. And Philip Dorr asks, I've been buying old sterling silverware sets for years now. Why don't I hear much about sterling silver? Sterling is 92.5% silver, and you know my tray of it. I love it. And I also have been accumulating. I mean, I could more than fill this desk up. You know, do they really want you to understand that you might be sitting on a whole bunch of money? You know, why don't they talk about these things? Because they don't want you aware of them. That's why. Just like, why aren't we hearing more about the public move toward gold and silver? And you know that that's happening because otherwise Walmart, Costco, Amazon would not be selling out of gold and silver as soon as they post it. Those are just big box stores. They do not care about currency life cycles. They do not care about executing a strategy. They aren't buying it back from you, but they're selling it to you because there is huge demand. So yeah, I agree with you, Philip. I love junk silver. I love silver in all of these forms, and I wouldn't care about cutting them up and cutting them into little pieces if I needed to. Totally agree with you. And Mithras says, people say gold is the thing. Fine, yes, it is. But it's not practical. And honestly, I always remember one, I think she meant quote. It says quite, but quote. And it goes like this: a lot of gold, but no fruit. Well, I'm not really sure what that is, and I've never personally heard that quote. I've heard more things like the golden goose. The goose that lays the golden egg. Goldilocks was a reference to gold. Good as gold, right? And why are these cryptocurrencies typically depicted in gold or silver or platinum? It's about perception management. So practical, well, I don't know. Is protecting your purchasing power practical? I think that's more practical than not. And if I'm traveling, I travel with my gold. Well, not all of it, but enough that if I get into trouble wherever I am in the world and I immediately need cash, I can convert it no matter where I am. That's pretty practical to me. Did you want to say something?
There's been some discussion in the comments about, like, there was somebody that was challenging another one of our followers to go and buy groceries with the gold, and I think that there's a misunderstanding, and I think that this quote is, or this comment is hinting at it, that gold, I think people perceive that we're going to use that to transact rather than have it as like something
a store of wealth
to cash in and get whatever currency to go and buy. So maybe explain the practical use of gold.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what things like Kinesis and Glint do, is they put it into a card so you can do your transaction. You can go to the grocery store and buy your food with it. Silver is more transactional, but the reason why you can't see it is because it hasn't happened here yet. If you go to Venezuela, you will see, and maybe I can pull that up and show you, because I have that, and how people use the metals to transact. Okay, I'll do a video on how people use metals to transact. But, you know, you're right. You're not going to take this gold coin that right now has a market value of, I don't know, $3,500, wherever it is, something like that, to buy an apple. That would not make any sense. And if you took it in there, people will go, what is that? Because we've been taught away from gold and silver as money. Having said that, when you're inside of a hyperinflation, what you will find is that things will be priced in terms of if you're in the U.S., wherever you are, in the local currency and also in the fraction of silver or gold. And I will do a video and show you that because I can. I have the data on it. And you'll see how practical it is. But honestly, the whole strategy is built in layers. And those layers cash would be part of those layers. What if they say you can't have it anymore? I mean, Canada, not that long ago, they didn't like the trucker strike. Bam, you are cut out of all of your accounts. So if you didn't have money outside of that account already, now, how are you going to buy your groceries if your cards don't work, right? So it's actually a whole lot more practical because I can take this into a jewelry store and walk out with cash, right? I could take this into a pawn shop. I can sell it back to me and end up with any currency that were any local currency. But the strategy is built on layers. So wherever we are as this whole thing unfolds, you should be covered. That's the goal. And by the end of it, you're also made whole from any taxes, any fees, any losses that you spend. It's not just one thing that we're looking at. It is a layered approach. And yeah, something like a Glint, a convertible gold card that is truly backed by gold because you can pull the gold out of it if you want to. That's how you go to the grocery store and buy at this point. But going back to the junk silver And also think about the grid, because that electricity and energy is going to be part of that equation, right? But if I needed to cut a tine off of this fork, so what? So I'll do a video on that, and that'll maybe make it more clear for you. And I don't know if I'll get it done for next week. It might be the week after, but I will get that done. It's now on my list. And Mitmont, but so few people own real gold. Do you really think there's a confiscation, or is that just fear mongering? Mitmont, that's history. It's not me saying it. And what do you think the manipulation is, right? They took gold out of our monetary system because when we were on a gold standard, if you didn't like what the government was doing, you could walk in with you can walk in with, a gold certificate and walk out with an ounce of gold. And what that did is it created restrictions around how much debt could be grown. And then in 1965, President Johnson took the silver out of the system. That doesn't make it right. And we, the public, just sat back and allowed them to take all the purchasing power away from us. Do you think that it's right that you work for 50%, the average wage? You actually, even though it looks like you're making so much more in terms of this stuff, but you're actually getting paid 50% of what you were in 1913? How do you address that, Mitmont? Do you think that doesn't matter? Is that okay with you? Because that's the question. Is it okay with you, or have you just been trained away from sound money so that they can control your behavior? Because I've read the documentation when they were setting up this system. And one of the things that they said was that through inflation, if people have to work more to maintain their standard of living, they will have less time to pay attention to what we're doing. How do you feel about that? I mean, I'd really like to know. How do you feel about that? Because you're looking at it from your perspective today and the technology and how they've pushed the stock market and the bond market and the crypto market and the real estate market up with this. But in every Ponzi scheme, you'll have to keep getting in new money. And so the banks need more collateral. And so here's a great way to digitize and tokenize all of these assets and bring them into the system, not for your benefit, but so that they can leverage your wealth and they can inspire you, because AI knows who you are, knows what they need to show you or say to you to get you to make choices to spend your equity. And then where are we? Well, we're right back at feudal times. And if that's okay with you, I can't tell you it's not, but it's not okay with me. And, and I got to be honest, it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm fine. No matter what happens, I'm 70 years old. I'm going to be here for, I think, another 30 years, and I have plenty. And I'm not even really all that worried about my family because I know what I've done. But I'm worried about you. And I'm worried about your family, even if you disagree with me. And by the way, I'm very glad that you're here. And I would say to the community, we need dissenting voices in here. We have to have this conversation, and we all have to keep an open mind about it, because you're really why I'm doing this work. And it's not as much for the people that get it, if this makes any sense at all, because those that understand it are going to protect themselves. It's for the people that don't. And I've had a lot of people say to me, well, if they don't get it, then that's just too bad for them. But that's not how I feel about it. Because what we're asking you to do is have a paradigm shift. And you're asking me to have a paradigm shift too. You're asking me to trust those cryptocurrencies, to trust those corporations and those governments that have yet to show me that what they're doing is actually in my best interest. I have to do what's in my best interest first to protect not just my purchasing power and what I've worked for 70 years to accomplish and accumulate, but for my family. Because I had those opportunities being born in 54. I had a much higher standard of living than my parents had, and that's what we all want for our children. But these generations coming up, can you go out and buy a house? You know, I would like to think that my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, your children, your great-grandchildren have opportunities and have the ability to dream and have those dreams come true. That's critically important to me. I'm not doing this for me. Believe me, right now I'm really tired and I need a day off. You know, I'm doing it because I'm obligated, because I have been born for this moment in time, and I have been moving and developing my craft and my understanding since the time I was 4 years old. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's why I'm doing it. And I'm doing it for everybody's benefit, except for corporations and governments and central banks, not for their benefit. I want to take that benefit away from them, and I want to give that power back to the people. So no, it's not just fear-mongering. If they've done it 3 times, why wouldn't they do it again? If they've been confiscating what do you think inflation is? Isn't that a form of confiscation? What do you think taxation is? Isn't that a form of confiscation? How about those royalties? Those are all forms of confiscation. Just because they don't use the C word? Arose by any other name? And Randy McCoy asks, since states are making gold and silver legal money, can the Fed still confiscate? They wouldn't be able to confiscate. I don't know that for sure because, hey, they can always change the rules and the laws. But if a state is accepting this as legal tender, then it would not be an easy thing. And I think what we're seeing is, and I'm happy to see this, is a battle that's being set up. And this is why it's so critically important that we write our senators and our congressmen and we tell them we want sound money in this state, because that'll give more pressure to the federal government, especially when we have somebody in administration that is more likely to support this measure, right? This is our best shot. It is our absolute best shot. So I would think it would definitely make it much harder to confiscate, but let's get it legalized all over the place, because then they wouldn't be able to do it. And Kenneth asks, if a CBDC gets instituted, will the desire for a tokenization of bullion gold also be a major driving factor for an overt confiscation of all post 333 gold before we transition? You know, I'll tell you, some big crisis will have to happen, and the CBDCs are getting instituted. That will be the next thing that'll come in after we've begun the hyperinflation, because what they're saying is they will promise there will not be any more inflation if we just give them that power. Now, President Trump has said that he's absolutely against a CBDC, but things can change. Let me tell you, things can easily change. So the desire for tokenization of bullion gold, 100%, they want to tokenize everything. They want to tokenize this glass, right? They literally want to tokenize everything so that you own nothing. We have to be smarter, because it's going to be much easier for them to tokenize bullion than it will to tokenize these. But make no mistake, they want to bring it all into the system. But you know, the interesting thing is, and I've talked about this before, historically, what's dynastic wealth? Well, first of all, the definition of dynastic wealth is wealth that has lasted in families at least 300 100 years. And it has 3 legs. It has real estate, truly rare collectibles, and gold. And that, arguably, you can do all 3 with gold, but also buying the gold, holding the gold to hold your purchasing power enables you to accumulate the other 2. That is how you leave a legacy for your family. Now, that's not going to be important to everybody, but it'll be important to some of us. It's really important to me. If it's tokenized, it's going to be easier to confiscate, but my goodness, wouldn't it be actually, if they do that confiscation after they've tokenized, you're going to know it. They are going to want to do it in a way that gets you to think that you're volunteering. They want you to volunteer it without realizing that this is their plan. That's that distance. So we'll see, but it'll be much easier for them to tokenize, right, all of the deposits in the IRAs because those administrators aren't going to stop them. We're going to find out, Kenneth, and it's going to be interesting to see how it is. I mean, the one advantage that you have when you are a grandma, right, when you've lived this long and you've seen this much history, is the questions that I had, like, why did people accept this? I mean, when President Johnson said, don't try and hoard this or we're going to come out and manipulate the market and maintain that value, 1 ounce of silver at $1.29. Okay, that's not where it is today. I mean, that's outrageous to me, and yet nobody squawked about it. It's time for us to start squawking. When they took the gold away from us in 1933, I mean, nobody really squawked about it. Let's start squawking. Let's say put it back. Put it back. We got to do that. Whether it's CBDCs, I mean, there's going to be a bunch of iterations before we get to the other side. It's not going to be a one and done. Whether it's stable coins, whether it's CBDCs, you know what the difference is between the two? Corporates issue stable coins and the central bank will issue the CBDC. The central bank will have a greater ability to put in negative rates and attack your principal. That's why they can promise there won't be any inflation, because it'll be deflationary. You know, when one currency goes away, another one comes up. Gold and silver holds your purchasing power in place till you get to the other side. And in the meantime, all of those opportunities that present just from this stuff going from overvaluation to undervaluation and gold going from undervaluation to fair valuation and ultimately to overvaluation. It's not rocket science. That's the strategy, right? It's just identifying the true fundamental value. So I would task you guys to go ahead and look at the purchasing power chart and look at that big fat zero. If all you can do is convert it into this, then what do you got? You got nothing. You got air. You got nothing. And Tito asks, please talk about what you think about XRP. If you're talking about the coin, I can see a lot of adoption in it. And it was if you're talking about the event, it had a lot of high energy there and the attendance was almost double. And I love Brad. He's doing a fabulous job, and it was really nice, you know, to see Jason and to see old friends from last year, me and some of the people that were there last year and came to talk to me this year. So, I mean, I think we're looking at part of the inevitable. And what I mean by that is, yeah, we're going digital. All I'm saying is control it. You have the ability and the choice right now to control it. Just do it. And Theodora asks, Pre-33 coins have the same value as a bullion coin up until when? They have a greater value than a bullion coin. A bullion coin is guided by the paper markets, because the spot gold contract that everybody says that's gold is just a contract, and they can create as much digital gold or paper gold as they want to, and so control the visible price of what you see. But in the collectible world, so these pre-33s, that is a physical only world. And so those always run more. And depending upon that quality and rarity, it's going to be some multiple of. So if bullion moves, say, $1, then a high population, lower quality collectible coin might move $2. It's not in lockstep, but it is ultimately in tandem. And again, I'm going to say, give our strategy specialists a call, and they can walk you through what those multiples are right now and where they were, which is where they are most likely headed, in my opinion. So we'll see, because remember, the more of this that's created, the more valuable even just the bullion is, let alone the collectibles. And Bill 457 asks, if the intrinsic value is worth more than the coin, people would hoard it like silver coins. That's why I thought they did away with silver in our coinage. Well, they were hoarding the silver not when we were using it as day-to-day money, but in 1961, it was made illegal for U.S. citizens anywhere in the world to hold gold, right? So in the U.S., well, that was gone in 33, but people living abroad, Americans living abroad, were still doing that. So the intrinsic value is worth more than the coin. And central banks are hoarding it. So, yeah, they took it away from us, but fortunately, we can still buy it today. Fortunately, at this moment, because people don't think of it as money anymore. They should, because it is the only real money that's out there. But today, we can convert this stuff into sound money, and let's do that before they take away that ability. Because that's what a gold confiscation would do. It would take that ability away. Not this ability, because this is collectible. It's a different market. But probably even this ability. No, probably not, because that is pre-33. But your ability to accumulate this. So, yeah, they did away with the silver and the gold in our coinage because that's what enabled them to devalue the currency. Otherwise, what did Nixon say? Same thing as Johnson. And just because we're changing it, because they look like, I think I have a new quarter in here. I do. Okay. I mean, they look not exactly identical, but pretty darn close to identical, so people wouldn't think that anything had changed. This was all about devaluing the currency. It wasn't about us hoarding it. That's Grisham's law, that they will hoard the more valuable currency and use the currency of the realm, which is exactly what happened. So let's bring it back, because that's how we bring our power back. Mithras asks, what is sound money? Great question. Thank you for asking. Sound money is real money that is above all governments and above all central bankers to inflate away. The reason why gold and silver has never ever gone to zero is because it has the broadest base of utility. It is used in every single sector of the global economy. So, yep, it's used in the financial system, but it's also used in art. It's used in electronics. It's used in solar. It's used in space travel. It's used in food. It's used in medicine. It's used in manufacturing. It's used in every single sector. So there is always demand, sometimes more, sometimes less. And a normal economy, works in waves, right? But with the advent of the fiat economy, that's why we have That's why we have booms and we have busts. So sound money is money that is above governments and central banks and cannot be inflated away. Primarily gold, that's the primary currency metal. Secondarily, silver is the secondary currency metal. Thank you for asking that. DL Blue 65, can you please explain gold tokenization as a modern form of confiscation? Banks are already massively tokenizing all of your deposits. And what it does is it breaks it down into itty bitty tiny bite-sized pieces. And it's not just the gold tokenization. This would be tokenizing, let's say, your house and the equity in your house. Now, in these little itty bitty teeny weeny pieces like $1 or less than a penny, because it can be very, very, very small fractions. It is easy to trade on a global basis. So it's taking this and it's turning it, it's depositing it, right? And then it's breaking it down into itty bitty pieces, and then smart contracts execute the contract. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what that's going to look like, but you will probably get to some level that you have used, right? Because it's on your phone. Now you're going in and you see this shirt that you want, and you've got lots of equity here, so big deal if we spend a little bit of it. An AI that knows how you think says, okay, if we present this in this way, then we're more likely to nudge her or him into doing what we want. Before you realize what's happened, you have spent all of your equity, and it could be somebody in China or somebody in France. It could be somebody in South America that has bought that token. And when enough of your equity has been sold, you will more than likely get a notification that, boom, it's gone, and you don't even notice it. So, but that would be a form of confiscation, wouldn't it? If they basically evaporate your gold holdings. I will not be tokenizing mine. I will, in part of the strategy, having enough so that no matter where we are in this trend cycle, you have what to work with. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one intangible basket. It's so much easier to fool you. Be diversified. And okay, could lowering rates cause collapse due to countries' investors dumping our debt? The lowering of rates is to inspire inflation. So it wouldn't cause the collapse. Continuing to keep the rates up where they are would be more likely to create the collapse, because as this debt needs to be rolled over, well, they couldn't afford the debt at this lower payment, at this lower level. So that makes it much harder to service the debt at the harder level. That is really more likely to create some kind of black swan event. Plus those derivatives, and a derivative is just an unsubstantiated bet, and it's leverage, typically about 1,000 to 1. So for every penny of equity, maybe there's 1,000. You've borrowed $1,000 or 1,000 pennies against that one penny of equity. So when that deal goes the opposite way, your equity evaporates just like that. So, that is a form of confiscation and inspiring you to sell to spend your wealth. It's just what they call nudging. And that is called perception management. That is not my term. That is a formal term that the government used. It was really instituted by Ronald Reagan and Rupert Murdoch in the 80s. And I remember that really well, too. Even though I can't say that in the early 80s, I'm going to be honest with you, if I had not stumbled across non-dollar denominated bonds in 1987, I would not know any of this. I wouldn't. So that's part of the reason why I say I was groomed for this moment in time. When you see something that happens 100% of the time historically, maybe it's different this time, but it's probably not. So you just have to be prepared, because those patterns that repeat put you in a position to be in the right asset at the right time, in the right place, and it enables you to grow your wealth base instead of having it transfer to somebody else. That's all. And that's just based upon a repetition of history. And if I'm wrong, so what? I have food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. I don't think that's such a horrible thing. If all I have is this and I'm wrong, it's a horrible thing. Now, if you have both, doesn't matter, right? And that's all I'm saying. Just be in a position where no matter what happens, you're just fine. And Tim Delph asks, what silver coins would you stack, including constitutional silver? Well, I like any of them, and I probably have most of them, but I do like silver eagles. I like the pre-64 dimes, quarters, half dollars, dollars. I like a variety of sizes. If I had to choose only one size, quite honestly, it would be dimes. And that's just because it is easier to put two dimes together than to break a quarter in half. That, of course, also is what comes in with sterling silver, because this is, I don't care about cutting it up if I'm doing this by weight. So, I'm not as worried around a silver confiscation. I will say, though, if more states follow suit and make only American coins legal tender, then you really do want the constitutional silver, the pre-1964 90% silver coins in a variety of sizes. What I personally do not have are big bars of silver, because I don't want to stick them in my pocket. They're a lot harder to work with when I'm going out there for barterability. And silver is primarily day-to-day barterability. And again, I will do a video showing you how that's gotten used in the real marketplace. And Taz asked, do you think Ripple and XRP will be at the core of the new financial infrastructure? It certainly appears that way. Germany's second largest bank, with 350 billion euros plus in assets, has adopted Ripple's digital asset custody platform. All of the banks want to remain in control. And some of what's happening, because the bank is still just a corporation after all, they're not a government agency, but they've been the intermediary and they don't really want to give up that role. So participating in these digital markets and the tokenizations is a way for them to remain in that third party loop. And yes, I think it's going to be really interesting, because if you look at the money flower from the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank, there is a place, and I'll put this in there so you can see it. Okay. But there is a place for purely private digital currencies that are outside of the central bank purview. But the bigger share of these digital currencies are way inside the central bank's control. And the commercial banks will help the central banks remain in control. So, I see the banks adopting all sorts of things that they're not really talking a whole lot about, but that keep them in control because they want that equity. So, most of their trading or most of their income is generated by trading. Well, what do they need? They need more collateral in order to do more trading. So that's why tokenizing gold and taking real estate, which has been financialized, but taking that to a new level of tokenization and bringing in rare collectibles and all of these things give banks more collateral. And if you aren't paying attention, then there's a crisis that will happen, and you'll be in a position where you're either going to lose that collateral or you agree to tokenize it. And just like 2008, it wasn't that long ago. Do you remember what happened with all of those mortgages and all the mortgage resets? And that enabled them to change those mortgage contracts, and people rushed to those if they were going to lose their house. Or a lot of people actually gave up their properties, which means then they could get sold and they get a new contract. Either way, and remember, I've done studies, and I should do this again because I know I can do it much better now, on what happens to those income producing assets through this reset. We're just positioning you on a historic basis to be able to take advantage of what's happening. So yes, I do think it'll be part of the financial infrastructure. I think Bitcoin's got a shot in Wall Street too. So Colleen Allen asks, how is the price determined on a pre-1933 slab-graded coin? Do all sellers ask around the same price? Is there a formula to determine the price of a coin? Well, the pre-33 coins are purely supply and demand. And so you can find what's happening in that market at PCGS 3000, and it's based upon several things. Quality, which is not the gold content, it's the level of blemish, and mint state, right? So mint state runs between 60 and 70, with 60 having lots and lots of blemishes. Mint state means never been in circulation. But when they were creating these coins prior to 33, they were being designed to be used in circulation. So they didn't really think about keeping these coins pristine. So they would have thrown them in a pouch or thrown them in a vault. So when I'm talking about the quality and rarity, it's the level of blemish. So the higher the mint state, the fewer the blemish, and then how many are known to exist in that date in each quality level, as well as how many are known to exist in any higher quality level. So there's no exact standard formula for the lay person to use and saying, well, this coin should be this or this coin should be that. Having said that, there is a historic average price that these coins will trade above spot, right? So for every dollar move here, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3.5, etc., based on that rarity factor. We work with several wholesalers, and that's what really keeps their toes to the fire. Plus, you want to work with somebody that's reputable, because you need to be in at the market and out at the market. So you've got to work with somebody that this is what they do all the time, and that there's not just one avenue for sales, but there are several avenues for sales. The way that we've set up our system, now this is not happening right now, but it has happened in the past, and it's quite possible that it will happen in the future, where you could have a string of coins, so continuous dates or different quality levels, same date. And if there is indeed the big gold rush, which I believe has already started, then you might also be able to capture a premium for those strings. Now, you might not have it, but with our client base, we know what everybody bought, and we would have the ability to marry them and potentially capture an extra bonus, right? It's not rocket science. It's just based on supply and demand. Like I said, your bullion kind of transpires or is in two different markets. It's the paper spot market as well as the supply and demand. So the spot market can go down, but the premium can go up on these and balance each other out, or you're going to have to pay more. The collectibles are only a supply and demand market. So you see it more honestly. And if you go to the ultra rarities, which are coins that could be selling for many millions of dollars, $15 million, $18 million for 1 ounce of gold, that's the same category as this, even though this is probably just a few $1,000s. That again goes back to understanding how you get the fundamental value of not just gold, but the dollar and everything else, because that's where I can't give you a lot of guarantees, but I guarantee you at some point, all assets, all instruments go to fundamental value. All of them do. So don't spend more than fundamental value on a coin. That's easy enough. But that's also not rocket science on how you eat up any fees or costs or losses, or when you spend your barterable portfolio and you liquidate and that cash. You want to make sure that you are in a better position on the other side of this mess than you are going into it. And that's all part of the strategy. And the strategy specialist can take as much time as you need and pull up as many examples as you want so that you can see what we're saying. But I can tell you absolutely, and they can show you absolutely, that the ultra rarities where the 1%ers live, that gold breaks out first. Then the more common, the 3,000, breaks out second. And then the manipulated spot market breaks out third. So you can see what those that are writing the laws and understand money and what's happening, you can see what they're doing. And personally, makes a whole lot of sense to do what the smartest guys in the room are doing on any given topic. And we're at the highest levels ever since they started tracking what central banks, the gold that they were accumulating, highest levels ever, last 3 years, and going into this year. What's that tell you? They know what they're doing to this stuff. They know it better than anybody else. And so there isn't one formula, but yes, the sellers ask around the same price, a little bit more, a little bit less. They ask around the same price, though. It's a very active market. And Lucia Bakova-Rin asks, can you please tell us when it is a good time to switch silver to gold? Is there a specific ratio between silver and gold we should watch out for? Well, I say that you give us a call and talk about your goals and how what your current standard of living is. And then what we do is we have a breakdown that tells you how much silver you need, how much gold you need for these different functions, whether it's to sustain your standard of living, protect the wealth that you've already accumulated, put you in a position to gain even more wealth, and or leave a legacy for your family. So there's no random thing, because everybody's needs are a little bit different. But I can tell you that if you're executing the strategy from Zang Enterprises, the sound money strategy, you're going to be executing the same strategy as I am, just kind of tweaked. So we'd look at what silver you have. And if you have really, really a lot, and too much, then now is probably a really good time to convert it. But we're going to make sure, because you've already paid fees to buy the silver, we don't want to triple fee you or double fee you. So I can't really go to just a random answer for that, but I would say call us and we'll help you make an educated choice. Okay? And Major New Money asks, what is your opinion on Glint, which is a company that takes fiat for gold and silver, which you can spend immediately as a debit transaction? Well, I really like Jason Cousins. I meet him at different events, and I like the fact that he'll convert it so you can use it. It is one way to put gold in the regular system because it's like using a credit card, but you can also pull the gold back out. Must be redeemable, so that's how I feel about it. I like Jason. I like Lint. I wouldn't put all my gold. That would not be where I hold my gold holdings. But for part of the barterable portfolio, it makes sense. It makes sense. And Pandemonium asks, any thoughts on the fact that Argentina is back again in the debt market after 7 years of absence due to its hyperinflated currency? Yeah, you can't fix a too much debt problem with even more debt. You can postpone it for a minute, like if you've maxed out your credit cards and they'll send you a new one in the mail so you can keep spending, but it doesn't get you out of the mess, and Argentina is not out of the mess yet. The only way that you can is to go back into a sound money system, and that's ultimately what always happens. This is a global event, as we talked about before. And we're going to see, but that's the battle. This is the opportunity to get sound money back in the system. We've got to take this opportunity, because if we don't, I don't like what it looks like for my great-grandchildren or yours. I don't like it, because we're slaves. We're slaves. I don't like being a slave, even though I do come from peasant stock. Strong like bull and full of. Matthew Rogers asks, why is so much gold shifting from London to New York? Ain't that a great question? Seems like a repatriation, and anybody that can write that gold contract and take delivery of the gold is repatriating it. And it's because there is a looming crisis that maybe they're just trying to get their hands on enough gold, just like central bankers are, and just like you should be doing too. And Told You So says, I've been following you since 2021. Thank you so much. And have acquired all except community. Nobody that I trust enough to discuss such things with has a clue as to what is coming. It's challenging, but we're your community. I don't know where you're located, but my guess is that it's going to become more and more apparent. And you obviously don't want to go in. That's why I say, build community around meetups, around community gardens, around not yard sales, but I'm sorry, I'm still recuperating from this past weekend. It's not yard sales, it's you go and you buy food there at the farmers markets. Because they're going to have more of a mindset, and I'd start there and see if you can't build some level of trust. But you're already part of this community. I don't know where exactly you are, and there is, even in your neighborhood, like I don't talk about any of this with my neighbors, but I've planted out my whole exterior of my property, and I'm right on a corner. And I've done that and let my neighbors know that they can come and pick a pomegranate. They can come and pick a zucchini. They can get some herbs. They can do that. So there are kind of, I guess, covert ways with a little bit of overt ways to build that community, because there is power in numbers. So we have to do that. I don't know where you are, but start there. Community gardens are a great place to start. Volunteer. Go to and volunteer at those farmers, because I guarantee you, in a garden, at a farm, there's always work to be done. Plus, you'll maybe learn some new skills. I know one thing that, it's a surprise, so we'll get this done. But Q.dog at ML, when have you paid for groceries with gold? Personally, I have not paid for groceries with gold because we're not in that place yet. But they have in Venezuela and Argentina, and they have in Portugal. So if you bear with me, I will show you. I've got it down on my list to do. Just make sure you keep coming back to the lives because I'll do it. I'll probably do it on a live, but I'll let you know. And also, by the way, that's where glint and kinesis comes in, because you can use gold to pay for gold for the food by having the gold in the card and then using the MasterCard. So there you go. DL Blue 65 says, what is your take on how the public will be able to convert the constitutional silver versus new silver being produced and stamped for X in 1/4% troy ounce pieces? You know, this is kind of interesting because gold and silver in any form are monetary at its base, right? And so what I've seen historically, and I'll show this to you, is how they've actually used things like this to buy the gold, or not to buy the gold, but to buy the food, to buy haircuts, to buy different things. I'm going to show you that so you can see how people have actually done it. But if the states make only American coins legal tender, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to use a round, right? Or a piece of flatware, 92.5%, or any of this. But remember, 100% of the time, you can always convert gold and silver into the local currency. You're going to want to think about when and how you do that, because by the time we go into hyperinflation, it's not like you're going to want to convert it and let it sit there, the cash sit there, because you're going to be very, very aware of how quickly it is losing its purchasing power value. So you'll do it in stages, and we'll be there to help you determine how often you need to do it. Maybe it's weekly. I mean, that's kind of a pain, but you're not really going to want to convert it more than the way that you need to use it. So bear with me because we're paying attention, but that is all part of the strategy, is making sure on the way out, you know how to utilize all of your gold and silver, whether it's to sustain your standard of living or take advantage of opportunities. But I do personally, I like all silver, but I have a lot of the constitutional silver. In fact, I have enough for 10 years for myself and both my daughters. And Jason Stagg asks, do you use solar power with EMP protection, or do you use something else for your power self-sufficiency? I do use solar power with EMP protection. Net protection. Now, I did attempt to do that on this house. In fact, that was the very first thing I did when I was building out my mantra. Unfortunately, they didn't do it very well, so it's never really worked. Having said that, in my bug out location, that is off grid, and it is all solar with battery backups, and I will be showing you that. Part of the challenge that I've had, so maybe you guys can help me figure this out. I mean, we're going to do the new YouTube channel where I can show it specifically. But the reason why we haven't really done it on this channel is because when I did in the beginning, because I just wanted to do it all on one channel, but people would unsubscribe because they're coming here for the financial information. They're not coming here for the prepping information. That's been really kind of a frustration for me. But, food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. We've got to get this done to be as independent and self-sufficient as we can possibly be. That's the only way that you can protect your freedom, really. Gold and silver is part of it. But you know what? You could live, if you're part of a community and you have all those other things, you can live without gold and silver. It won't protect your purchasing power or any of that, but if you have ample food and water and all of that, So not everybody has the ability to accumulate it. Come together in community. I mean, I'm setting up at my bug out location to support 40 people with all different skill sets because it takes a community to survive. And Elder asks, I'm in Canada where Prime Minister froze bank accounts when we asked questions he didn't want to answer. I buried my silver in the woods in case government demands it. Do you suggest this? I mean, you need to make sure that you know where it is. And, I definitely do believe that you need to have it hidden in a place where you can find it. Make sure it's watertight. Make sure it's fireproof. And there are all different ways that you can hold it. I had a client who had a large parcel of land, and he also had some heavy equipment. So he buried it and he put this huge boulder over it. Well, nobody's going to be able to move that boulder unless you have a piece of equipment to do it, nor will anybody know where that gold and silver is. But you also have to make sure that somebody you trust knows where it is, like a child of yours or something like that. Because, recently in the Czech Republic, these people were hiking and they found this can of 600 gold coins that the current market on them by weight was something like $300,000. But historically, because there were more of this kind of coins, I think dated between 1850 and 1910 or something like that. They had a much larger market value. So yes, you have to keep it safe. You do. That's one of the inconveniences of it, whether it's in not a bank, but some of it in a private safe deposit box is okay. Barterable, you want close to you because you need to access it like that, right? What you're using to execute the rest of the strategy, maybe you don't need to have as close. But just like we're talking about diversification and everything else, diversify where you hold it, make sure that it's safe, and make sure that somebody that you can absolutely 100% trust knows where it is, just in case, God forbid, something should happen. And Caleb's Carnivore Quest asked, I'm new to this stuff. You're doing great, though, honestly. What can I expect when I give you guys a call? I mostly just want to learn about money, and I don't have very much money, so I'm not looking for this huge strategy yet. So call us. We love the fact, because I remember you're 16, right? I love the fact that you want to be educated. We will take the time to educate you. You know what our minimum is? 1 ounce of silver. It is not about the money we make on this, because we really don't. But that's how strongly we feel about people owning silver. We are super keen on education. So just call us. What you're going to expect is you can expect to talk to a strategy specialist and have that conversation. And just tell them what you want, ask for guidance, and then you can do Zoom calls so that they'll show you and talk you through it. We're happy to do that. We are happy to be of service. I promise you. And Chris Willis asks, sounds like you have weakened in your resolve against crypto and staunch position in metals. I have definitely not weakened in my staunch position in metals. But this past weekend, I'm not going to lie to you. What I'm really trying to do is create community, because there's power in numbers. So what that means is that I have to figure out how to present this information in a way that people can take it in and assimilate it. And so if I'm sitting here saying to you, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to turn off and you're not going to hear anything that I have to say or see what I'm trying to show you. I've known for a long time that the digital quest was inevitable. I've been watching it unfold since 2009. And I've also known that it's a Trojan horse. So I've not weakened in my resolve for metals. I personally don't own any cryptocurrencies, nor at this point do I intend to until after the major crisis and I see a cup formation and it's time for me to reposition some of my wealth. But I continue to accumulate this and food and water and everything else. So I don't think that, I guess I got this time what I was more expecting the last time. And people are they have such blinders on. If they believe in cryptocurrencies, that's all they believe in. And that's a mistake because it has not gone through its test yet. It is intangible and it's easy to manipulate, but it is the Trojan horse. You can't stop everything, so you pick your battles. My big battle, and I'm so staunch on this, and that's never going to change, is to get this back in the monetary system. That's it. I want to get this in the monetary system for all of our sakes and for the future's sake. And I'm not going to get it if people aren't hearing the message. And look, I don't know anybody else that studied currency life cycles and understand what I understand, how they make these transitions. So I'm just trying to figure out my voice. It's just like when people think that I'm getting political. I'm not getting political. I have looked at enough history to see that whether you're a Republican president or a Democrat president, their job is to move us along, devalue the currency, and keep the status quo and keep the power where they want it. So I don't really care who's in the Oval Office. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I care about what happens in the monetary system. I care about what happens in the economy. And I care about how you're lied to. So if it seems that I've weakened my resolve, I haven't weakened my resolve, but I can't fight this battle. But I can fight this battle. And I need to be able to talk to, just like we have people coming in here that, oh, you're just a grandma, what do you know? I know how they make these transitions. And I know how they trap you in this system so that you lose all choice. And I see that they want you to own nothing. And I see that they want to take all of your opportunities away from you so that it's just for whoever they choose. This is a big game. And you and I, we're not at the top. We're not. But we can be. And so, no, I have not weakened my resolve, even a teeny weeny bit on this. But I'm not going to lie to you. It's. I feel a little depressed. That's what I was saying to Josh earlier. And I said, boy, this is a foreign feeling for me. In some ways, I did a better job at presenting how they make the transition, and I'm happy with that. I felt like I figured it out or started to figure it out in Australia in November, and I feel like a chunk of it is there, okay? I see holes thanks to people asking me questions. I go, okay, I can fix that. But I have to speak to them. I have to speak to you. I have to speak to people in a way that they can take in what I'm trying to say, understand it, and put their own best interests first. And if they close their ears, then they can't protect themselves. And that's really what I'm about. That's why I was put on this planet to make a positive difference for a lot of people. And I realize that with your help in this community, you are part of the community. Every single person that watches this video is part of the community. And if we come together, we can make a positive difference. And I can't do it alone. I need you to do it. I'll speak in front of any group. I don't care. And hopefully I'll get better and better and better every time that I do it. But I don't think I did as good a job as I needed to this time. And I guess that's why I feel a little off about it. And that's probably what you're reading, because it's a different voice, right? And I'm still learning how to do that. And I'll always be learning how to do it. I mean, every time I finish doing anything, my next time is how can I make it better? And I hope you see that in my work, that it gets better and better and better as I go on. I just don't think that I was as effective at helping people see what they need to see as I would have liked to have been. I'm working on it. So that's what it is, Chris. And I'll tell you too, I feel comfortable in this community just laying it out there, just kind of opening everything up and laying it out there. That's what you're reading in me. I wish I had done a better job. And I know that if somebody's there that was there and they're going to go, "Oh, Lynette, you did such a great job." And, honestly, it's never good enough for me. It never is. I'm always trying to do it better and better and better, because this information that I give you can protect you and your family. And that's what we have to do, and protect the world. We got to protect the world. And sounds like you're more open to a position of predominantly metals with some crypto. Not at this point. Nope. Not there. Carla Lamar. I would like to liquidate some gold, but I don't want to pay the 28% fee to sell back to the company I bought it at. Where else can I sell a few ounces? Well, number one, make sure that they're actually going to charge you the 28%. But when I started Zang Enterprises, one of the things that was critically important to me was that our wholesalers would buy back. It's a little bit longer process if you didn't buy it from us, because they need to examine the coins first. But call us and make a comparison, right? We'll give you the price, call the place that you bought it from, make a comparison. And actually you can do that anywhere and make a comparison. So that's the way that you'll know. But give us a call. We'll tell you how much we'd pay for it. Then call where you bought it and see, and then liquidate it through whoever makes the most sense. But it's easy to liquidate. And we're set up like that. And Johnny Red said, you say buy rare coins, but the premium on them is 40 to 50% over spot. It could even be more than that, right? So how can an average person afford that? That's a great question. And I'm actually not saying that you need to buy rare coins. I am saying that you need to buy coins that are less likely to be confiscated in an over confiscation, right? And even though we're not really ready for this quite yet, we are talking about, this is Jacqueline Dawson, who's the president of the company. This has been on her bucket wish list for a while, to enable people to, she's probably going to kill me for saying this, but at some point when we're ready, because we're working on so many things, we're going to have some kind of layaway program so that you actually can. But we're not really talking about you buying super duper rare coins. You can do fractional coins. There's all different ways to approach it. But I'm going to say, again, call us. Let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish, and then see what makes sense for you. These are customized. The sound money strategy are customized to you. But we do want to help everybody get into the right kind of gold and the right kind of silver that's going to support what you're trying to do. I hope that makes some level of sense. And DL Blue 65 says, Do you prefer constitutional 90% silver over the newer 100% silver fractional coins because it's cheaper? I keep getting hung up on people having a hard time with converting the value of a dime. Well, it's kind of easy to do that, but honestly, where that difference really kind of comes in are those states that have legalized gold and silver, but say that you can only use American coins for it. That's where you might want to do this easier. Plus, like I like silver in any form. That's the reality. At the end of the day, when push comes to shove, you can have it in this form. It doesn't matter. So have a variety. Be diversified, because it's 90% silver, so they can do it by weight, and then every place has a computer. It's easy enough to calculate out how much this dime is really worth, right? That's easy enough, the dimes, the quarters. I have a variety. I don't just have pre-64. I mean, this happens to be a new silver eagle. I like foreign silver too. I mean, I have maple leafs, I have Philharmonics, I think are the prettiest coins. You know, I don't have them in gold because that'd be monetary metal, but I totally have them in silver. So, and I have fractional rounds as well. So you do you, boo. I think you can have a variety and be in good shape, because the legal tender laws would be that you can use it to pay your taxes and anything you owe the government, things like that. But when you go to the grocery store, you probably will be able to use all of it and any of it, because they'll have tester kits. And remember, gold and silver are non-magnetic. Now, there are other metals that are also non-magnetic, so that's just one tool. But let me do that video on how people have transacted recently with gold and silver. I'll do that. I'll prioritize that. Tom O'Connor asks, do you suggest stacking raw pre-33 or slabbed? Both. I have both, right? So again, it goes back to what you're trying to accomplish. I have this because I have a business and I have a lot of staff and I have to pay salaries no matter what. I have to pay salaries. So for me, this is my emergency gold. And if I need to raise cash quickly, this is what I'm selling first. The slabbed are for other functions. So this is emergency, like a savings account. This is my savings account. This I'm going to use to pay off a mortgage. I'm going to use it for buying other assets when the time is right. I'm going to use it as a legacy to pass down through the generations. So that's why I always say, you put your goals first. What are you trying to accomplish? And then you let that guide what you convert this garbage into. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I have a question on the pre-33. So I've seen there's been a few people in the chat during the stream where they're talking about Chinese basically making fake pre-33 coins.
Tungsten.
How do you? Oh, okay. So it's not like they're just stamping gold to look like it's made in 33.
Well, typically they use. Well, no, they are right. It's counterfeit, and what they'll use is tungsten because it's closer in density and weight to actual gold. But even that cannot really duplicate it. And there are different testing machines for it, but this is the point in working with a reputable dealer. So the wholesalers that we work with are Mint Direct wholesalers, and everything we work with is certified. And these things go through like this 100-step process and a whole bunch of different eyes and hands and tests and everything that guarantees that it is what it is. And so just like earlier when somebody was asking me, well, where can I liquidate this? And I said, well, we can do that for you, but it's going to take longer. That's because if you bought it from us, then we know what it is and we can do it like that. But if you bought it elsewhere, then it needs to go to the wholesalers for them to review and make sure that it actually is what we think it is. And then we can go ahead and do the transaction.
So no eBay purchases.
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. And Stephen Brewster asks, if money is backed by 40% gold and there is a war and need to print money, will they print even if gold backed? If they say that it's backed but it's pegged, yes, they will. That's what we did, right? We were funding the Vietnam War. And so even though in Bretton Woods, we, the U.S., made a commitment to maintain the value of our dollars at $35 to the ounce of gold, we didn't do it. And so in the 60s, there was this huge run on the dollar where countries were sending in dollars and pulling the gold out of our system, so much so that by the time President Nixon closed that gold window and disallowed governments from converting their dollars into gold and pulling that gold out of the system, there was a little bit less gold in our coffers than there was prior to the confiscation in 33. And had they not done it, we'd probably have no gold. And maybe we did. Maybe we do. Maybe that's why they decided not to audit Fort Knox. So, yeah, if it's pegged, just like we saw in Zimbabwe in October, they're telling you it's 40% backed by gold. Well, if it really was, they couldn't do the 44% overnight devaluation that they did. That's why it must be redeemable, because that's the only way to make it more honest. Otherwise, you got to run on the dollar or whatever currency that is. And keep in mind that the run on the dollar has already begun here, because while they were converting dollars into gold and pulling the gold out of the system, since 2013, Japan and China have been selling off their holdings of treasuries or not buying as many. So that is, in today's terms, a run on the dollar. So that's happening again, right? It's history repeating itself. The problem is that the treasuries are now, instead of gold underpinning the global financial system, you've got debt underpinning the global financial system. So when they can't grow any more debt, what do you got? Nothing. And XRP Renegade asks, where would you cash gold? In banks? Well, it is highly probable that should they do an overt confiscation, or as they digitize the gold, the banks would be tasked with gathering all the gold that they can. Right now, it's going to be primarily dealers like Zang Enterprises, right? But there are about 3,000 dealers around this country, so it's actually a very active and liquid market. And no, I'm not loving banks. So Demetrius Carter asks, should we move our digital assets into gold and silver after they pump? Are you talking about, I think what you mean by pumping is pushing the digital assets up? Sure. That's a great strategy. That's called a ratio trade, and it sure makes a whole lot of sense to sell an overvalued asset and then convert it into an undervalued asset. Makes a whole lot of sense. So yes. And ML asks, the dollar is dying. Central banks are stockpiling gold, hand over fist. Digital cryptocurrencies are way more efficient than the SWIFT system. The writing is on the wall. A gold-backed digital system. And I agree with that. I totally agree that that's where we're headed if we demand that gold-backed system. Ultimately, sure, because they're going to have to get the confidence of the public again. So what's the battle? Redeemable. But it doesn't go so smoothly from this into the next system. There's going to be a crisis. There's going to be a crash. It's going to happen. It's what happens every time. This time isn't going to be different. So that's why if you go into the true flight to safety asset, and that's what we've been seeing with big players turning away from dollars and dollar-denominated assets and even the yen carry trade. And, Japan's having some issues again. Shocking, right? You go to safety for now, and then you convert it. After we see the accumulation pattern, we'll know when it's over. And when they go to put a component of gold in it, we've got to get it redeemable, though. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything unless it's redeemable. But I agree with you, ML. I agree. Connie Karn asks, modern monetary theory acts like inflation is just an inconvenient outcome and offers no method to correct it. Wouldn't you agree fiat isn't dead, but MMT's life cycle is what's failed? No, fiat is dead. Fiat is government decreed. This is $100. But if you had this $100 and you had this $1 bill, I got news for you. You got to work a whole lot harder for this than you do for this. And what can you buy with either one of these? So fiat is dead because there is officially no purchasing power left in the system. They have to attack principle, and that's what those negative rates, that test was about, and that's where the central banks will easily take us. No, they don't have anything to correct it, but neither do they right now with a debt-based system. They use the interest rates to regulate the rate and speed of inflation, not to eliminate it, because that's part of the system, is that inflation. And that's also the wealth transfer mechanism, because you see things going up in terms of dollars, like your salary, right? 1913, $800 was the average wage for a year. Now it's what, 62,000 or 68,000, something like that. Sounds better, doesn't it? Well, I'd much rather have 68,000 than 800. But when you convert it into sound money, in terms of sound money, we're actually working for 50% less today than we did back in 1913. Is that okay with you? That's why you have gold. It protects your purchasing power, and it must be redeemable, or the next system won't protect it any better than the current system. And the other thing that we don't know about is what they're going to use exactly to justify creating new money. Modern money theory just means, that's kind of one of the things that they've talked about in the digital system is, okay, you need money for something? Just do that. That's all. That's good enough. Yeah. When the money is that easy to pull out, what do you think it's worth? But that's still a fiat money system. So, yeah. And don't they act like inflation? They're fighting inflation. They're creating inflation. All they're trying to do is regulate the speed so you don't change how you spend your money. You take on more debt. You take on another job. So, yeah. Haas 1, is holding natural gold nuggets a bad idea? Holding gold in any form is not a bad idea. And that could be considered a collectible. So, no, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Tom O'Connor asked, I am surrounded by people that say gold is a bad investment. What do they see that I don't? No, I think that you see what they can't see, because what they see is the stock market going up or the crypto market going up in terms of this stuff, and gold is suppressed. I mean, how do you think they'd think about gold if the spot market was at $40,000 right now? They'd think differently. So it's all about perception management. It isn't what do they see that you don't. It's what do you see that they don't. And that's why we have to help them, right? That's why you don't get it. You can still go out and pick a tomato from my garden. And these are so yummy. So Michael Lamb asks, can you explain what SDRs are and how the IMF may use them when things hit the fan, or will they? And what role do they play in the economic system? Great question. So the SDR stands for Special Drawing Rights. It's just a name, just like the dollar or the euro or the yen. It's just a name. But what it is the currency of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. All of the members of the IMF are Treasury secretaries and central bank chiefs. So all unelected officials. But the SDR was created in 1969 to take over as the world reserve currency at that time. But Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and made an agreement. And so the petrodollar was born, as was an artificial market for countries that needed to hold dollars to transact outside of their borders. So lumber, steel, oil, etc. It is a basket of currencies which could include every currency on the planet. And they have been working hard at creating a universal currency. So I personally believe, and I've been actually saying this since China said, what about the SDR in 2009? I do believe that will be the world reserve currency. It just makes sense. But they put all of these pieces and parts in place, and then they let them sleep. So SDRs have been in the financial system, and pretty much every country has a bunch of them. In 2009, but they kind of went to sleep. It wasn't that they weren't used. They were used quite a bit. And if you go to the post office website, USPS, and in the search bar, you put SDR, you're going to see that it comes up. So everybody's been used to it. Everybody's had a certain level of it. And they started ratcheting up and issuing more SDRs in 2009, and then they did it again. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was in 2000, and I'd have to go back and look. I want to say 16 or 17, but I could be completely off by that. But understand the point of that is that every country has, or pretty much every country has, a bunch of SDRs. Now, they have something else, too, that's called a substitution fund. So any country or corporation that is sitting on dollar-denominated assets, like the treasury bonds or dollars themselves, they can deposit those into the substitution fund, and then the substitution fund converts them into SDR denominated assets. But frankly, it makes a whole lot of sense for the IMF to SDR to be the world reserve currency, because if every currency is involved in it, there's your universal currency that would easily translate into local currencies. Therefore, people wouldn't really know, the public, at least when they do it, would not really know that anything had changed, because we'll still have the dollar here. It's probably going to be a digital dollar or whatever. But they keep the name the same so that people think nothing has changed, when in reality, everything had changed. But what would that do to the SDR if global corporations and global governments sent in their dollar and dollar denominated assets that were then converted into SDR denominated assets. That would make the SDR the most widely traded, most liquid currency. It would take whatever's left from the dollars and turn it into SDRs. So that's the role that I see it playing in the economic system. And I did a video not all that long ago, maybe 6 months ago or so, something like that, on the SDR as that universal currency taking over when this system collapses. Because presumably also they say it has the cleanest balance sheet. That's because it doesn't have to grow debt in order to create SDRs. It lets the countries grow that debt and then uses those currencies as part of the SDR. It is a trade weighted basket. So, as an individual country, the U.S. has the largest share or more of the dollar as part of the SDR, but that can all change. That could change easily. And once they allowed the Chinese yuan to enter the dollar, there is a contingency on the other currencies that could come together and actually have more power in the SDR than the US dollar currently has. So that's a great question, Michael, because I do think that is going to be the next world reserve currency, since they don't have to reinvent the wheel. All they're doing is updating the wheel, and they've put in place an easy transition when they're ready for that transition. Great question. And White Cobra 67 Shelby, do you see more businesses opening up in local communities to help consumers to change their gold and silver into the new monetary system? Sure, I absolutely do. Because I see Wall Street participating in this market like they did in the past, because Wall Street is about making money. And so, yes, I do see a lot of businesses that will sprout up to take advantage of the trend. Does pre-1933 coins need to be slabbed to get the most value? Yes, typically they do. And that's why I use this, because this is just a raw coin. I mean, I hold it in my hand. I take it traveling. I don't care if it has blemishes on it. It's still roughly an ounce of gold. What do I care? But this is more protected. So that means this can grow more blemishes. This can't. Right? Because it's slabbed. And there's fewer of these, right? And it depends on the date. I mean, in some cases, maybe there's only one or two. That's not true with this one. But there's all different levels. So again, I go back to a very layered approach. But yes, I do think we can see that. And Suzanne Higgs asks, can you talk about learning new skill sets? I spin wool. It's an odd skill, but it could be valuable, right? 100% it can be valuable. So, and I know how to lay irrigation. So that's valuable. Yes, any skills that you have are valuable and barterable. So it's very important to learn new skills and create relationship at the same time. Honestly, do I really want to go out there and lay irrigation right now? Not really. But if I needed to, could I? Because I have that skill set. Spinning wool is a great skill set. We don't have this yet, but actually at my sister's homestead, so you'll be seeing this, she does have sheep. And I'll bet you, knowing her, she probably does also spin wool. Yeah, that's a great skill set. And I wish I had a loom, because that looks like something, I don't know that I'd have time for it, but yes, that's a great skill set, and we all need to learn them. That's why going to your farmers markets or going to your community gardens and volunteering, what do you need me to do? Right? You don't have to possess necessarily a skill set when you walk through that door, but you can learn it easily, and that makes you more valuable in the community. And yes, for me, your ability to spin wool would be a valuable asset because I intend to have sheep, just like my sister already does. And she just had a couple new little lambs. So yeah, I think that's a great skill set. And we need to learn whether it's cooking. I mean, who do I have going up there? I have plumbers, farmers, teachers, doctors. Fortunately, my daughter is a surgeon, carpenters, lots of different skill sets, right? Takes a village. So, yep, a massage therapist. Yeah, people that know how to can and cook and do all of that. It's fabulous. But unfortunately, we're now out of time for today since I have my next thing soon and I have to get ready for it. But I have to tell you, I feel so much better. You don't even know what these Tuesday live events do for me. Typically, by the end of it, I am so much more energized and I really feel so much better after this. And I really want to thank everybody so much for being here. And particularly the people that don't believe in this. You know, I love this conversation with everybody because we can all learn. And those that are into crypto, if they come in and they just bring more information and help us see what's happening on that score, is that a bad thing? I don't think so. You don't have to agree with everything that everybody says. Find the gems, find the truth, and utilize it for all of our best interest. But let's keep this conversation open and let's make room for everybody to come in and have this conversation. And I think that's why I was so disappointed in myself, because I don't feel like I did a great job at that this time. But I'll work on it and I'll get better at it. And I never, ever, ever give up. And until next we meet, you don't give up either. But please, I know we can make a positive difference for the world. So please be safe out there. Bye-bye.